Black Maid cursed softly in Korean. The Mafia boss smiled. Say it again. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Sarah Brown had been working for the Romano family for almost a year. Quiet, humble, and always keeping to herself, she was used to the whispered comments behind her back, the occasional glance of disdain from the wealthy guests who often filled the mansion. But tonight was different. The grand ballroom was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, and the sound of an orchestra playing in the background. Sarah moved gracefully among the guests, refilling drinks and offering delicate hors d'oeuvres. Her heart, however, was elsewhere, as she had heard rumors about some of the people in the room. She recognized a few faces from her past life, and her anxiety grew with each step. As she passed a small group of guests, one of them, a man in an expensive suit, looked at her and sneered. "What do you know about real luxury, maid?" He mocked, his voice carrying through the room. Sarah's face flushed. She lowered her eyes, trying not to let her embarrassment show. She had heard worse, but something about this man's tone struck her deeply. He continued, "Can't even speak proper English, can you?" The laughter that followed was sharp, cutting through her like a knife. Sarah fought the urge to retreat, to disappear into the shadows where she felt safe. She had been humiliated in front of so many, yet she stood still, her hands trembling as she held the tray. It was then that Vincent Romano, the head of the Romano crime family, caught sight of her. He had been watching from across the room, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. He had seen the look on her face, the way she froze in place, the way her shoulders slumped as the man's words continued to hang in the air. He had heard the jeers, and his usual calm demeanor shifted. Vincent was a man who prided himself on his power and control, but when it came to seeing anyone under his employ being treated with disrespect, something inside him snapped. He walked across the room, his presence commanding attention from everyone around him. The laughter died down as he approached Sarah. He glanced at the man who had made the cruel remarks, his eyes narrowing. With a smile that barely touched his lips, Vincent spoke in a voice that carried weight. "Say it again," he ordered, his tone cold but firm. The man was taken aback. He had not expected this from the Mafia boss. His arrogance faltered, and for a moment, he didn't know how to respond. What do you mean?" The man stammered, clearly flustered. Vincent's gaze never wavered. "Say it again," he repeated. His eyes locked onto the man's, daring him to make another comment. The room fell into an eerie silence as the man's bravado crumbled. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was speechless, overwhelmed by the authority in Vincent's voice. The guests, who had been watching the scene unfold, now stood frozen, unsure of what would happen next. But for Sarah, the tension was slowly dissolving. Her heart began to settle, the weight of the humiliation lifting slightly as she realized what was happening. The man who had mocked her was now the one being exposed, and she wasn't the one left in the shadows. Vincent's presence had shifted everything. Sarah stood still, her heart pounding in her chest as she waited for the response. The room had gone deathly silent, the tension so thick that it seemed to freeze everyone in place. She could feel Vincent's presence beside her, his shadow stretching across the marble floor as he stood tall, watching the man who had dared insult her. The arrogant guest's earlier bravado had completely evaporated, replaced by a look of confusion and unease. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she realized Vincent's intervention had completely shifted the power dynamic in the room. What had once been a moment of humiliation for her was now becoming a spectacle of justice. Vincent's gaze remained fixed on the man, his expression unchanged. The guest, now visibly sweating, glanced around at the other partygoers, his eyes darting from face to face, searching for a way out of the situation. But no one spoke. No one moved. Everyone was waiting. The man shifted his weight uneasily, his hands trembling as he tried to find his voice. I didn't mean," he stammered, his words faltering. "You didn't mean what?" Vincent's voice cut through the air like a blade, cold and commanding. There was no warmth in his tone, just an unmistakable sense of power that left no room for argument. The man opened his mouth again, but this time, words didn't come. He was trapped, caught in his own arrogance. Vincent turned his attention to Sarah, his expression softening ever so slightly. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice a sharp contrast to the authority he had just displayed. Sarah nodded, her eyes wide with a mixture of relief and disbelief. She had never expected such a reaction from Vincent, let alone from anyone in the room. The man who had insulted her now looked like a small, insignificant figure, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah felt a sense of dignity. The guests, who had been watching the entire exchange, were now murmuring among themselves. Sarah could hear bits and pieces of their conversation, the whispers of awe and admiration for Vincent's actions. It was clear to everyone that he had just exposed the true nature of the man who had mocked her. As the room began to settle, Vincent turned back to the guest, his eyes narrowing. "Apologize," he commanded simply. The man's face flushed red as he stammered, trying to find the right words. I'm sorry," he said, his voice weak and unsure. Vincent nodded once, his expression unreadable. "Good," he said, his voice calm once again. The tension in the room slowly began to dissipate, but Sarah could still feel her heart racing. The moment was far from over, but she knew it had already changed everything. The man who had mocked her had been forced to apologize, and she wasn't the one left in the shadows anymore. The power had shifted, and for the first time, Sarah felt like she had a voice. As the evening wore on, Vincent remained by her side, ensuring that no one dared to repeat the mistakes of the past. The party continued, but for Sarah, everything had changed. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was someone worthy of respect, and in that moment, she realized that sometimes, all it took was someone with enough power to make the world see things differently. As the night continued, Sarah found herself in a daze. The grandeur of the Romano estate, the sparkling chandeliers, and the sounds of laughter from the guests all seemed distant now. Her thoughts kept returning to the moment when Vincent had stood by her, his commanding presence turning the tables in an instant. The humiliation she had endured moments ago felt like a distant memory, replaced by a sense of pride she had never known before. She moved through the crowd, her steps more confident than ever. She had done nothing to earn this respect, yet Vincent had given it to her, and now, everything felt different. The whispers of the guests who had witnessed the exchange were no longer mocking, but filled with curiosity. As she refilled a guest's drink, one of them, an older woman, elegantly dressed, paused and looked at her with an unexpected softness in her eyes. "You must be one of the best employees Mr. Romano has," the woman said, her voice gentle. Sarah nodded politely, unsure of how to respond. "He doesn't take kindly to those who disrespect his people," the woman continued, her tone almost admiring. Sarah felt a wave of warmth wash over her. For the first time, someone was speaking to her with respect, as if she were more than just a maid. The evening wore on, but Sarah's mind kept drifting back to Vincent. She had never imagined that someone like him, powerful, untouchable, and ruthless in his own right, would care enough to stand up for her. Yet he had. It made her rethink everything. The way she saw herself, the way she allowed others to see her, and the way she had always accepted her position without question. Maybe, just maybe, she was more than she thought. As the night drew to a close, Sarah was preparing to leave when Vincent approached her again. This time, he wasn't commanding the room. Instead, his posture was relaxed, his expression softer. "You did well tonight," he said, his voice calm but firm. Sarah looked up at him, still in awe of how easily he had turned everything around. "Thank you, Mr. Romano," she replied, her voice steady. "It's rare for me to see someone take a stand for themselves in my world," Vincent continued, his gaze piercing. "But you did tonight." Sarah didn't know how to respond to that. She had never thought of herself as someone who needed to take a stand. But tonight had changed everything. "I've seen a lot of people crumble under pressure," Vincent went on, his voice almost reflective. "But you, Sarah, you didn't. That takes strength." She felt her chest swell with pride at his words, but she didn't speak. Instead, she simply nodded, unsure of how to express the gratitude she was feeling. "I want you to know that your actions haven't gone unnoticed," Vincent said, his voice low. "From now on, things will be different. You're more than just someone who serves drinks and cleans rooms. Sarah's heart raced at his words. She had always seen herself as just an invisible figure in the background, doing her job and nothing more. But now, Vincent was telling her that she was something more, something that mattered. I'll make sure of it, Vincent added with a slight nod, as though sealing some unspoken promise. Sarah couldn't help but smile, though she was still processing the weight of his words. As Vincent turned to leave, he paused for a moment and looked back at her. You'll never be invisible again, Sarah, he said with quiet conviction. And just like that, everything had changed. The doors of the grand estate closed behind Sarah as she left, but she walked out with her head held higher than ever before. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was someone worthy of respect. And the world, as she knew it, had just shifted. Sarah's life had changed in ways she could not yet fully comprehend. The next few days at the Romano estate passed in a blur. Each time she walked through the halls, she felt a sense of pride she had never experienced before. No longer just a maid, she now carried herself with the quiet confidence that had once seemed so foreign to her. The guests who had once looked through her now noticed her in a different light. Whispers of Vincent's intervention had spread through the estate, and for the first time, Sarah could feel the shift in the air. She wasn't invisible anymore. Her daily tasks had not changed, but the way people treated her had. The staff, too, seemed to acknowledge her in ways they hadn't before. It was as if they, too, had witnessed the shift in power, and now they regarded her with something akin to respect. But it wasn't just the staff. The family, including Vincent, treated her differently. Every time Vincent passed her in the halls, there was a quiet nod of approval. His words to her the night of the party echoed in her mind, and she began to wonder what that truly meant. She wasn't just serving anymore. She was a part of something larger, something she hadn't been able to grasp before. Vincent had given her more than just respect. He had given her a chance to prove herself. One evening, as she was serving drinks in the Romano family's private lounge, Vincent approached her again. His presence, as always, commanded attention, but this time, there was something different in his eyes. Sarah noticed it immediately. There was a warmth, a glimmer of something that told her he was about to say more than just pleasantries. Sarah, he began, his voice steady, how have you been? Are you settling in? She smiled at him, feeling more at ease with him than ever before. Yes, Mr. Romano. Thank you for asking. Vincent studied her for a moment, as though weighing his words carefully. I've noticed the way you carry yourself now. It's different. Sarah lowered her gaze for a brief moment, still feeling the weight of his words. I feel different, she admitted. It's all still new to me. Vincent smiled, a rare and genuine smile. Good, he said simply. You deserve to feel that way. It's easy to lose yourself when you're always told who you are. But you've shown me something, Sarah. You've shown me strength. The words caught her off guard. Strength. She had never thought of herself as strong. Not in the way he was referring to, at least. She had always been the quiet, invisible one, never standing out, never making waves. Yet here he was, telling her that she had something more. Thank you, she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. That means a lot to me. Vincent's smile widened slightly, and for a moment, the air between them felt less charged, more like two people having a quiet conversation. I want you to know, he continued, that I've seen a lot of people come and go in this world. People who have more power, more wealth, more influence than anyone could imagine. But they don't have what you have. Sarah blinked, trying to process his words. What do you mean? Vincent took a step closer, his gaze softening. You have the ability to rise above, to make a difference, no matter where you start. I see that in you. His words were like a key unlocking something deep inside her. For the first time, she saw herself in a new light. She wasn't just a maid. She wasn't just a servant. She was someone capable of more, someone who could make an impact. I won't forget what you've done for me, Mr. Romano, Sarah said, her voice filled with sincerity. Vincent gave her a small nod, his eyes lingering on hers for a moment before he turned to leave. I know you won't, he said quietly. As he walked away, Sarah stood there, her heart racing with a mix of emotions. She was no longer invisible. She was seen, not just by those around her, but by herself. And as the days passed, she would continue to prove that she had the strength, the courage, and the heart to be more than anyone had ever expected. The weeks that followed Vincent's words were transformative for Sarah. She felt the subtle shift in how she carried herself every day, walking through the halls of the Romano estate with her head held higher. It was as though she had finally realized that she was not bound by the labels others had placed on her. She wasn't just a maid. She wasn't just someone who served drinks and cleaned rooms. No, she was someone worthy of respect, someone with a voice that could no longer be ignored. The family, the guests, and even the staff had begun to treat her differently. The whispers that once spoke of her as an invisible servant now carried a different tone. It was clear that Vincent's actions had left a lasting impression, not just on her, but on everyone who had witnessed his support. She wasn't the only one who had noticed the shift. Over time, Vincent began to seek her out more often, not just as a member of his staff, but as someone whose opinion he valued. He had begun to trust her judgment, asking for her input on small details regarding events, and sometimes even allowing her to take the lead on certain tasks. It was a sign that he saw something in her that no one had ever acknowledged before. One afternoon, as Sarah was organizing the dining area for a private event, Vincent entered the room. He had a quiet confidence about him as he walked toward her. There was no grand gesture this time, no dramatic speech. It was as if their connection had become something more natural, more familiar. "Sarah," he said, his voice carrying the same calm authority as always. "How are things going today?" Sarah smiled at him, feeling more at ease in his presence than ever before. "Everything is going smoothly, Mr. Romano. Just making sure everything is in place." Vincent nodded, his eyes scanning the room briefly before returning to her. "Good," he replied. "I've been thinking about something. You've been with us for quite some time now, and I've noticed how you've handled yourself. Not just with the guests, but with the family and the staff as well." Sarah looked at him curiously, unsure of where this conversation was headed. "You've proven yourself to be more than just a maid," Vincent continued, his voice steady. "You've shown strength, intelligence, and a kind of grace that I respect. And I believe it's time for you to take on a different role here." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. A different role? She had always been the one to clean up the messes, to serve the drinks, to stay in the background. She had never imagined that Vincent would offer her more. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft with curiosity. Vincent paused for a moment, as though considering his words carefully. "I want you to take on a managerial position. There are some aspects of the estate that need attention, and I believe you are more than capable of handling them." Sarah's mind raced. A managerial position? The idea was so foreign to her, so far from what she had ever expected in her life. But the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. She had been watching, observing, and learning the workings of the estate for months. Perhaps it was time to put that knowledge to use. I don't know what to say," Sarah stammered, unsure if she was even worthy of such a position. Vincent smiled gently. "Say yes," he said simply. "You've earned it, Sarah. It's time to stop hiding in the shadows." Her heart swelled with emotion, and for a brief moment, Sarah felt as though the weight of years of invisibility had been lifted from her shoulders. She wasn't just an employee anymore. She was someone who could make a difference. "Yes," she finally said, her voice filled with conviction. "I would be honored." Vincent nodded, a look of satisfaction crossing his face. "Good. We'll discuss the details soon." As he turned to leave, Sarah stood there, her mind swirling with thoughts of the future. This was a turning point, a new chapter in her life. She wasn't just cleaning rooms anymore. She was shaping the future of the Romano estate. And she would no longer be invisible. She was a force to be reckoned with, and she was ready to show the world what she could do. The transition into her new role was both exhilarating and challenging for Sarah. Each day, she found herself learning more about the inner workings of the Romano estate. As Vincent had promised, she was given the responsibility to manage several key operations, overseeing events, managing the staff, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. At first, it was overwhelming. The pressure to make the right decisions, to prove herself capable, weighed heavily on her. But as the days passed, Sarah grew more comfortable in her new position. She had always been observant, learning the ins and outs of the estate while working in the background. Now, she could finally use that knowledge. One afternoon, as Sarah was reviewing the plans for an upcoming event, Vincent approached her. He had always been a man of few words, but today, there was something different in his demeanor. He seemed to be watching her closely, as though he was waiting for something. "How are things going with the preparations?" he asked, his voice calm, but with an undercurrent of curiosity. Sarah looked up from the papers in front of her, meeting his gaze. "Everything is on track," Mr. Romano, she said confidently, feeling a sense of pride in her work. The team is ready, and the venue is set. I believe it will be a success. Vincent nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Good, he said. Then, after a brief pause, he added, I've been thinking about something. You've come a long way, Sarah. I see the effort you've put into this, and I have to admit, I'm impressed. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't used to receiving praise, especially not from someone like Vincent. But his words felt genuine, and for a moment, she allowed herself to savor the recognition. Thank you, Mr. Romano, she said, her voice soft but filled with sincerity. I'm just doing my job. Vincent looked at her for a long moment, as if contemplating something. Then, with a slight smile, he spoke again. You're doing more than that, he said. You're showing the kind of leadership this estate needs. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her at his words. Leadership. She had never thought of herself that way, but maybe that's exactly what she was becoming. Vincent took a step closer, his tone shifting slightly. You've proven that you can handle responsibility, Sarah. And that's why I want to offer you something more. Sarah's heart raced. More? What could that mean? She had already been given so much, more than she ever thought possible. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vincent's eyes softened, and for the first time, she saw a glimpse of something beyond the ruthless businessman he usually portrayed. I want to make you the head of operations for this estate, he said, his words steady and sure. You've earned it. Sarah blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. Head of operations? It seemed impossible. She had never imagined herself in such a position, let alone leading the entire estate's operations. Are you sure? She asked, the disbelief evident in her voice. Vincent nodded. I've been watching you. You're not just a maid anymore, Sarah. You're an integral part of this family now, and it's time you take your rightful place. The weight of his words settled over her, and for the first time, Sarah felt as though she truly belonged. She wasn't just a worker. She wasn't just someone who served at the pleasure of others. She was someone who had earned respect, someone who had risen above the roles that had been imposed on her. I don't know what to say, Sarah stammered, overwhelmed by the offer. Vincent smiled, the slightest hint of pride in his expression. Say yes, he said simply. You've already proven you can handle this. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the magnitude of what was being offered to her. She had worked hard for this moment, and now it was within her grasp. She wasn't going to let it slip away. Yes, she said, her voice strong with newfound confidence. I'll take the position. Vincent nodded, satisfied with her answer. Good, he said. You've earned this, Sarah. I'll be counting on you. As he walked away, Sarah stood there, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. This was a turning point in her life, a moment she would never forget. She had worked hard to get here, and now, the future was hers to shape. As Sarah settled into her new role as the head of operations at the Romano estate, she quickly realized that the responsibilities were more demanding than she had ever imagined. No longer just a maid, she now found herself at the helm of managing the estate's intricate operations, overseeing staff, planning events, and maintaining the delicate balance of high expectations from both the Romano family and the guests who frequented the estate. It was a world she had never been a part of, but it felt like she was finally stepping into a life that she had always been destined for. The first few days were a whirlwind of meetings and preparations. Sarah had to quickly learn the nuances of her new role, managing a team that had once seen her only as a servant. But she was determined to prove herself. With each passing day, she grew more confident, and her decision-making became sharper. She would oversee everything, from the smallest details of dinner settings to coordinating the grand affairs the Romano family often hosted. One morning, as Sarah was reviewing a list of upcoming events, Vincent walked into the office. His presence was commanding, as always, but today, there was something else in his demeanor. He seemed pleased, almost approving, and Sarah couldn't help but wonder what had brought this rare smile to his face. How are things going? Vincent asked, his voice as calm as ever. Everything is on track, Sarah replied, feeling a sense of pride in the smooth operation she had been overseeing. The team is responding well, and we're prepared for the upcoming gala. I think it will be our best one yet. Vincent raised an eyebrow, his gaze lingering on her. You've really made an impact, he said, his voice softer than usual. I can see the changes you've made around here. The staff respects you, and the events are running more efficiently. I knew you had it in you. Sarah smiled, grateful for his recognition, but she didn't let it distract her. She was focused, determined to prove that she belonged in this position. Thank you, Mr. Romano, she said, her voice steady. I've just been doing my best. Vincent nodded thoughtfully. Your best is more than enough. But I have something for you. Sarah looked up, surprised. She had expected no more than a casual conversation, perhaps a compliment for her work. But this was different. What do you mean? She asked, her curiosity piqued. Vincent walked over to her desk and placed a small envelope in front of her. I've arranged for you to have some additional training, he said. I think you're ready for more. I want you to understand the business side of things here, beyond the estate. This will help you see the bigger picture. Sarah's heart raced. She had always been curious about the inner workings of the Romano family's empire, but she never imagined she would be included in that world. I don't know what to say, she stammered. This is unexpected. Vincent smiled. Don't overthink it. You've earned it, Sarah. You're not just someone who manages the estate anymore. You're part of something bigger. It's time you understood that. Sarah felt a mix of emotions, surprise, excitement, and even a little fear. She had worked her entire life to get out of the shadows, and now, she was being given a chance to step into the light in ways she had never imagined. This was her moment. I won't let you down, she said, her voice filled with determination. Vincent gave a small nod, his approval clear in his eyes. I know you won't. You've come a long way. And now, we'll take the next step. As he turned to leave, Sarah sat back in her chair, the weight of the envelope in her hands. She had been given an opportunity she never expected. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Sarah was no longer just a maid. She was someone who had the power to shape her own future. The world that had once seemed so out of reach was now within her grasp. Over the next few weeks, Sarah immersed herself in the training that Vincent had arranged for her. Every lesson, every new responsibility, felt like a piece of a puzzle falling into place. She spent her days learning about the intricate business dealings of the Romano family, from managing their investments to understanding the logistics behind their larger operations. The more she learned, the more she realized how much power the Romano family held, and how deep the connections ran. What started as a simple job as a maid now seemed like an entirely different world. Vincent had been right. She was no longer just managing events or overseeing staff. She was becoming a part of something much bigger. Her role on the estate grew more demanding, and as her responsibilities expanded, so did her confidence. One evening, after a particularly challenging day of overseeing the preparation for an exclusive event, Sarah sat in her office, reviewing notes for an upcoming meeting. The weight of her new duties was beginning to feel heavier, but she welcomed the challenge. The sound of a soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see Vincent standing in the doorway, his usual calm demeanor giving way to a more serious expression. May I come in? He asked. Of course, Sarah replied, feeling a mix of surprise and curiosity. Vincent entered, closing the door behind him. I've been keeping an eye on your progress, he said, his tone steady, but with a hint of something more. And I'm impressed with how you've handled everything. You've adapted faster than I anticipated, and you've shown a remarkable ability to lead. Sarah's heart swelled with pride. She had worked hard for this recognition, and hearing Vincent's approval made it all the more rewarding. Thank you, Mr. Romano, she said softly, not quite sure how to respond. But I can't help but feel there's so much more to learn. I'm still adjusting to everything. Vincent smiled, a rare and genuine smile that softened his usually stern features. That's the mark of someone who's truly dedicated, he said. You're always looking for ways to improve. But you've already come so far. He paused for a moment, his gaze shifting to the papers on her desk. I wanted to talk to you about something important, he said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Sarah looked up at him, a sense of anticipation building in her chest. What is it? She asked, her curiosity piqued. Vincent leaned against the desk, his arms crossed as he met her gaze. I've been thinking about the future, he began. Not just for the Romano family, but for you as well. You've proven yourself to be invaluable to this estate, and I want you to be more involved in shaping what comes next. Sarah blinked, her mind racing. More involved? What did that mean? Vincent continued. I want to make you part of the family's strategic team. You've shown that you understand how to run the estate, but now I want you to have a say in the direction of the business, the investments, and the future of everything we've built. His words took her by surprise. A part of her wanted to jump up and say yes without hesitation, but another part of her felt unsure. She had never imagined herself in such a role, and the weight of Vincent's offer felt immense. "I'm not sure what to say," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is a huge responsibility." Vincent nodded, his expression softening. "It is," he agreed. "But I believe you're more than capable. I've seen how you handle pressure, how you make decisions. You're ready for this, Sarah. I wouldn't offer this if I didn't think you were." Sarah took a deep breath, her mind running through the possibilities. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to shape her future and be part of something far bigger than she had ever imagined. "Yes," she said finally, her voice firm with determination. "I'll do it." Vincent's eyes sparkled with approval. "Good," he said, nodding. "We'll discuss the details soon. But for now, know that you've earned my trust, Sarah. I have no doubt that you'll help us build an even stronger future." As he left her office, Sarah sat back in her chair, the weight of his words sinking in. She was no longer just a maid, no longer just a worker on the estate. She was now an integral part of the Romano family's future. And as the days went by, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning of something much greater. She was ready to embrace it, to lead, and to prove to herself and everyone around her that she was more than capable. As the days passed, Sarah's new role in the Romano family began to feel more like a natural extension of herself than a monumental leap into the unknown. She had proven herself capable, not only managing the estate, but also taking on the responsibility of contributing to the family's broader business strategies. She felt more confident with each meeting, each decision, and each challenge that came her way. No longer did she feel like the background character in a story written by others. Now, she was a driving force in shaping the narrative of her own life. One particular morning, Vincent called Sarah into his office. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and for a moment, she was reminded of the first time they had spoken in this very room. Back then, she had been unsure of herself, hesitant to take on the weight of the responsibilities that he had entrusted her with. Now, as she stood before him, she felt a sense of belonging. "Good morning, Sarah," Vincent said, his voice steady as always. "I trust everything is in order." "Yes, Mr. Romano," Sarah replied, meeting his gaze. "The team is working well, and I've been keeping up with all the tasks you've assigned. Everything is running smoothly." Vincent studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I know you've been working hard, and I've been following your progress closely," he said. "You've made significant strides in a short amount of time. I'm impressed." Sarah smiled, grateful for his acknowledgement, but she remained focused. "I'm just doing what needs to be done," she said. "I've learned a lot, and I'm continuing to grow into the role you've given me." Vincent leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping thoughtfully on the desk. "That's exactly why I've called you in today," he said. "I believe it's time for you to step up even further." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. "Step up?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "Yes," Vincent replied, his expression serious but not unkind. "You've shown that you can handle operations on the estate, but now, I want you to have a more direct role in the family's future. I want you to start making decisions that will affect the business outside of these walls." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. The idea of making decisions on such a large scale was both thrilling and terrifying. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are more than ready," Vincent assured her. "I wouldn't have entrusted you with this responsibility if I didn't think you were. The family needs someone with your insight, your ability to think ahead, to make the right calls. You've earned my trust, and now, it's time for you to take that trust and use it to shape the future." Sarah felt the weight of his words, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt a surge of determination. She had come so far in such a short time, and this was her moment to prove just how far she could go. "I won't let you down," she said, her voice filled with conviction. Vincent's lips curled into a faint smile. "I know you won't. I believe in you, Sarah. You've earned this." As he stood up, he placed a hand on her shoulder, an unexpected gesture that felt both reassuring and empowering. "I'm confident that you will do great things. Let's see how you handle the next phase of your journey." Sarah left his office that day with a newfound sense of purpose. She wasn't just a part of the Romano family's operations anymore. She was a key player in the decisions that would shape the future of the estate the family, and the empire they had built. The path ahead was uncertain, but Sarah was no longer afraid. She was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that she had the strength, the knowledge, and the support to succeed. This was only the beginning of her journey, and she was determined to make her mark. The once invisible Maid had become a force to be reckoned with, and she would no longer be held back. The world was hers to conquer.